Hey there, night dwellers. Welcome back to Nightmare Frequency. Before we descend into tonight's chilling tale, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, get cozy, and prepare yourself for another journey into the unknown.
I never believed in ghosts, or demons, or anything that went bump in the night. That kind of fear felt childish to me, the kind you grow out of once you realize there's a logical explanation for everything. But all that changed one October evening when I inherited my aunt's house. She died alone. No one knew for days. They said it was a heart attack, but I knew better. Aunt May had always been eccentric, bordering on paranoid. She kept crucifixes above every doorway, burned sage daily, and refused to let mirrors stay uncovered after sunset. I used to laugh about it. Now I wish I'd listened. The house was a decaying Victorian mansion on the outskirts of Branford, Connecticut. My childhood memories of the place were vague. Dim hallways, the scent of lavender and old wood, and a lingering feeling of being watched. When I stepped inside after so many years, I immediately felt the air shift, thick and oppressive, like walking into a crypt. The smell of dust and something metallic like blood hit me. The electricity didn't work that first night, so I lit candles and settled into what used to be the guest room. The fireplace remained functional, and the flickering flames cast dancing shadows across the faded wallpaper. It wasn't long before I heard the whispering. Soft, indistinct, like someone murmuring just behind the walls. I told myself it was the wind or old pipes, but my stomach churned in protest to the lie. I listened carefully. The whispering always stopped when I turned my head, but when I turned back it resumed, closer. That night I dreamt of my aunt. Her face was gaunt and gray, eyes sunken and wide with horror. She opened her mouth to scream, but only blood poured out. I woke in a cold sweat, the candles burned down to waxy stubs. My breath clouded in front of me, it was freezing. I checked the thermostat, it read 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Still I could see my breath. The second day was worse. While clearing out the attic, I found my aunt's journal hidden under a loose floorboard. It was wrapped in cloth and bound with twine, as though to keep something inside. The entries started off normal, mostly complaining about the weather and her arthritis. But over time, they grew dark. It watches me through the mirror. I see it smile when I cry. I tried to cover the glass, but it finds ways to peek through. It talks to me now, says it's been waiting for me. It wants someone new. I think it lives in the mirror, the one in the guest room closet. I can't destroy it. It won't let me. My skin crawled. I didn't remember a mirror in the closet, so I went to check. The door creaked open slowly, revealing old coats, a dusty trunk, and a tall, narrow mirror facing inward. My reflection looked pale in the dim light, but otherwise normal. I stared at it for a moment longer. That was my first mistake. The reflection blinked before I did. I slammed the door shut and backed away, my heart thundering. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the closet locked and the bedroom door wedged shut with a chair. Still I heard scratching, slow and deliberate, like nails on wood. It came from the closet. The third night, I made the mistake of looking in the mirror again. This time I swear I saw something behind me, tall, shadowy, and hunched. When I turned around, nothing was there, but when I looked back, it was closer. The journal mentioned something else, an old ritual, a way to trap it again. The instructions were vague, circle of salt, black candles, chanting a name she never wrote. But there was a drawing, a symbol. I memorized it. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to leave, but the house wouldn't let me. Every time I tried the front door, it was locked, bolted from the inside. Windows wouldn't open. My phone had no signal. It was like the house existed in its own pocket of reality. By the fifth night, I stopped pretending I wasn't terrified. I heard footsteps in the hallway at night, dragging sounds like something heavy being pulled along the floor. Once I peeked through the keyhole and saw nothing, just blackness, pure and endless. Then something moved in it, slowly, deliberately. I didn't sleep at all after that. The climax began on the seventh night. The temperature plummeted. I couldn't feel my fingers. All the candles blew out at once. A pressure built in the house, like a scream being held in. Then came the knocking. from inside the walls, from under the floor, from the mirror. I had the journal clutched to my chest, the salt circle drawn around me, 4 black candles lit. The symbol was etched into the floor with chalk. I sat cross-legged inside the circle, waiting. The lights flickered and the scratching started again, from every direction. I began to chant the words I could barely pronounce, trying not to sob. The flames bent inward like the air was being sucked into the circle. And then, the mirror in the closet shattered. It didn't fall apart. It exploded, shards flying everywhere, but none touched me. And in its place stood the thing. It wasn't a reflection anymore. It was real. 7 feet tall. Its body was made of shifting darkness, constantly writhing. Its face was smooth and featureless, no eyes, no mouth, but I felt its gaze all the same. The air became heavy, like breathing underwater. My ears popped. Blood trickled from my nose. It stepped closer. My candle flames turned blue. I kept chanting. The thing howled without sound, a psychic scream that echoed in my mind and split it open. It reached for me with long, spindly fingers that crackled like static. When its hand met the edge of the salt circle, it shrieked, this time out loud. A sound like metal tearing, like every scream I'd ever heard layered atop each other. It couldn't cross the line. I chanted louder, tears streaming down my face. The chalk symbol glowed faintly red. The entity recoiled, writhing violently, its body becoming smoke and reforming again. But I didn't stop. I poured every ounce of fear, of rage, of grief into the words. The room shook. Plaster fell from the ceiling. The windows shattered inward. And then with one final screech, the thing imploded, dragged back into the broken mirror, which stitched itself whole in reverse, like watching time rewind. Then everything went silent. I don't know how long I sat there. The candles had melted to black puddles. My throat was raw. The mirror was whole again, but blank. No reflection, just dark, opaque glass. The front door creaked open the next morning like it had never been locked. I left and never looked back. The house still stands, empty. Some say they see faces in the upstairs window at night. Others claim to hear scratching when they pass by. I tell myself I'm safe now, that I won. But some nights, when the lights are off and the room goes cold, I hear a whisper just behind me, and sometimes my reflection blinks first.
Story number 2.
It started when I took the job as a night shift security guard at the Larkridge Historical Museum. I was broke, desperate, and barely staying afloat after losing my last gig. Larkridge wasn't a big place, just an old converted estate that housed local artifacts, antique furniture, paintings, and a few rooms preserved exactly as they had been since the late 1800s. My job was simple: stay awake, monitor the motion sensors, and walk a patrol every 2 hours. No guests, no excitement, easy money, they said. The first 2 nights were uneventful, boring even. I brought books, snacks, and a thermos of coffee to keep myself busy. Occasionally, I'd hear creaks from the wooden floors or groans from the ancient pipes, but nothing unusual for a structure that old. Then came night 3. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the east wing motion sensor tripped. I checked the monitor. Room 6, the Victorian bedroom exhibit. That wing had been closed for repairs the week before. No visitors had been in there for days. I took my flashlight, sighed, and walked the creaky halls. The museum at night was unsettling. Shadows danced against cracked wallpaper, and the portraits along the walls seemed to follow me with their eyes. I reached room 6, unlocked the velvet rope barrier, and stepped inside. The air was cold, but not natural. It was the kind of cold that settled into your bones, that made your breath catch like something unseen was watching. The room was staged as if someone still lived there. A bed with lace sheets, a rocking chair, a vanity with an oval mirror, and an old porcelain doll on the shelf. The sensor light blinked red. Something had moved in here. I checked behind the curtains, under the bed, in the closet. Nothing. As I was about to leave, the doll on the shelf fell to the floor. I froze. I hadn't touched the shelf. No breeze, no vibration. It simply tipped forward and landed face down. I leaned down, flashlight shaking, and turned it over. Its eyes were open. I didn't know dolls could do that. I returned it to the shelf, left the room, and tried to convince myself it had been a fluke. I told the morning supervisor about it. He smiled, shrugged, and said, "Yeah, weird things happen in that room. You get used to it." I didn't sleep that day. Night 4, 3:27 a.m., another motion sensor trip, room 9, the parlor. This one made no sense. There weren't even windows in that room. I checked the monitor again. The camera feed was static. Every other room was fine. Just that one was dark, distorted, buzzing with electronic interference. I took the flashlight again. My heart pounded harder with every step toward room 9. When I got there, the door was cracked open. That door was locked during the day. I made sure of it myself. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the parlor looked normal, too normal. Everything was exactly in place. The piano, the velvet love seat, the grandfather clock, the chandelier. Then I heard it, a single note from the piano. I turned my light toward it. Nothing moved. The keys sat still, but the note lingered in the air like a warning. I backed out, locked the door, and returned to the security office. I didn't file a report. I didn't want to sound insane, but the fear stayed with me. That night, my dream was worse. I was walking through the museum alone, but every portrait turned to watch me. I could hear breathing behind me, raspy and wet. When I turned around, the doll was there, life-size now, its eyes black, mouth stitched, and it reached for me with gloved hands. I woke up screaming, the sound echoing off the walls. I almost didn't return the 5th night, but I needed the money. I convinced myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, imagination. But that night broke me. 2 a.m. Every motion sensor in the building tripped at once. I stared at the panel in disbelief. That wasn't possible. The museum had 14 rooms, all of them lit up red. Every camera feed went dead simultaneously. Then the speakers clicked on. Static first, then a whisper, not in English. It sounded old, guttural, like something ancient forcing its way through broken electronics. I grabbed the flashlight, but the batteries died the moment I flicked it on. Every light in the museum shut off. Total blackness. And then I heard footsteps. Everywhere. Upstairs. Downstairs. Behind walls. Crawling sounds, dragging sounds, moaning. I backed into a corner trying to keep still, but I felt a shift in the air, like someone leaning in close to my face. A cold breath whispered, "He watches through the mirror." I ran. I sprinted through the pitch dark, tripping over exhibits, knocking over a chair. I reached the main door and tried the security code. It beeped, denied. I tried again, denied. From behind me came a soft creak, like a door opening. I turned. Down the hall stood a figure, not a shadow, not a person. It was tall, too tall, wearing what looked like an old funeral suit with a wide-brimmed hat covering its face. But I saw the eyes, red, glowing from under the brim. It didn't walk. It glided. I backed away, crying now, and ducked into the bathroom, locked the door. My breath came in ragged gasps. The lights flickered above me. The mirror in the bathroom began to drip. Not water, not fog, blood. It oozed down the glass, thick and pulsing like it was alive. Then the surface warped, bent outward like something was pressing from the other side. A handprint formed, long fingers, sharp nails, then another, then a face, not mine, a woman's. Hollow eyes, mouth agape in an eternal scream, skin bruised and blistered. I turned and smashed the mirror with a fire extinguisher. Glass shattered. The blood stopped. Suddenly, all the lights came back on. The door beeped green. I ran outside into the cold, early morning light and never went back. They said I abandoned the post, that I left thousands of dollars of damage, but I didn't care. I left the town altogether. Months passed. I tried to forget, but last week I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single object. The doll. Its eyes were open.
Story number 3.
I was 12 the summer my cousin Miles disappeared. It happened at my grandparents' cabin deep in the Appalachian woods, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by thickets of pine, dense fog, and silence so heavy it pressed on your chest like a weight. My family went there every summer, but that year felt different, colder. The trees looked wrong, taller, older, watching. My grandfather always said the land had secrets, that the forest remembered everything. I thought it was just the ramblings of an old man, until the night Miles vanished. He was 13, bold, always daring me to go deeper into the woods, to touch the twisted trees that oozed sap like black tar. He said he found something once, an old well hidden in a glade no one else could find. He called it the Whispering Pit. He said it talked to him when the sun went down. That night it was just the two of us. Our parents had gone into town. The storm knocked out the power and we lit oil lamps like it was the 1800s. Around midnight, Miles woke me up, whispering, "It's calling again," he said. "The pit. I need to go back. I told him to shut up and go back to bed, but he was already slipping his boots on. I grabbed my flashlight and followed. Not because I believed him, because I was scared to be left alone. The woods at night felt like a different world. The trees bent in unnatural ways. The air had a hum to it, like something ancient vibrating just below hearing. We walked for maybe 20 minutes, deeper than we'd ever dared go before. Then the forest opened, a perfect circle of bare earth, no grass, no birdsong, no wind. Just the pit. It was wider than I expected. Maybe 10 feet across, perfectly round, blacker than the night itself. Even the flashlight didn't reach the bottom. Miles stood at the edge, eyes wide, swaying like he was in a trance. "They want me," he whispered. "What? Who?" "The ones in the dark." I reached for his arm. He turned to look at me, and his face was wrong. His eyes were pitch black. His skin was pale and wet, like he'd been soaking in water for hours. But his mouth? He was smiling. Then he jumped, no hesitation, no scream, just stepped into the void and vanished. I ran to the edge, screamed his name until my voice gave out. I saw nothing, heard nothing, except one thing: whispers. Dozens of voices speaking in a language I didn't understand. Some angry, some crying, some laughing, all of them coming from below. I ran back to the cabin. The police searched for days, found nothing, no tracks, no signs of struggle. They accused my family of covering something up. But I knew what I saw. That was 10 years ago. I don't sleep well. I hear the voices sometimes, late at night, through vents, through windows, through dreams. Always whispering. A month ago I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a photograph, black and white, grainy. It showed the forest clearing, the same pit. But standing at the edge was Miles, his skin still pale, his eyes still black. And on the back of the photo, written in dirt or blood, were 3 words: "We are waiting." I went back to the cabin yesterday. The woods were the same. Still, ancient. Hungrier, I found the clearing. The pit was still there, and now it's wider.
Story number 4.
When I bought the farmhouse, it was supposed to be a new start. After the divorce and losing my job, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere cheap. The listing described it as a fixer-upper with history, surrounded by empty fields and backed by a dense stretch of forest. Isolated. Peaceful. Perfect. I moved in alone. The first day was uneventful. The place was old, with creaky floors, yellowed wallpaper, and a smell of mildew that hung like a curse. There were old furnishings left behind, mirrors, portraits, even a child's rocking horse in the attic that no one had bothered to remove. I was too tired to care. I unpacked the essentials and passed out early. That first night, I woke up to footsteps in the hallway. I assumed it was the woods settling. Then I remembered. The hallway had carpet. I got up, heart thumping, and stepped outside my room. Nothing. Just the quiet of the house holding its breath. But as I turned to go back inside, I saw something impossible. At the end of the hall stood a man, not a burglar, not a neighbor. He was wrong. His body was there, but his head was blurred like smeared charcoal. He twitched slightly, like a frame stuttering in a broken film reel. I blinked. He was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I convinced myself it was stress, sleep paralysis, a hallucination. I spent the day ripping up old carpet, cleaning mold off the walls, and ignoring the heavy feeling in my chest that never went away. By the 3rd day, the mirrors started acting up. No matter how clean I got them, the glass stayed cloudy, but only at night, and only when I was alone. Worse still, I started noticing shapes, blurs behind me in the reflection, things that weren't there when I turned around. Sometimes they moved. The worst was the tall one. He stood still in the mirror but leaned slightly forward every time I looked away. Closer, closer. I covered the mirrors with sheets. It didn't help. That night I heard whispering in the walls. Not rats, not creaking. Voices, breathy, garbled ones that didn't care if I understood. I found strange symbols drawn under the wallpaper, blackened spirals and runes scratched into the wood, and one phrase carved into the closet floor under the bedroom: "They hide in glass." I packed a bag. I was done. But the house wasn't. The front door wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't break. My phone was dead and the radio only played static, until one night it didn't. It played a child's voice, soft, repeating a nursery rhyme I didn't recognize. Round and round the mirror cracks, pulls you in and never lets back. One by one, they steal your face, till no one's left in your own place. That was when the mirrors stopped showing me. At first it was subtle, A smile when I wasn't smiling, a blink too soon, a twitch in the wrong direction. Then, full replacement. I'd walk past a mirror and see someone else, someone who looked like me, but wasn't. He stared at me, mocked my movements, grinned when I cried. One night he waved, then he moved, out of the mirror. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as he stepped into my room like crossing a threshold. I backed away, but the walls seemed to close in. He didn't speak. He only smiled, a mouth too wide, teeth too many, and raised a hand toward me. I blacked out. When I woke, I was on the floor in front of the full-length mirror, except the reflection wasn't moving. He stood there, inside the glass, smiling, and I was looking out. I pounded on the inside of the mirror, screamed, but all the figure outside did was pick up my bag, sling it over his shoulder, and walk away. He lives in my house now, in my skin. No one noticed the difference. If you find an old farmhouse with a history and mirrors that don't clean, don't stay, because they do hide in glass, and they're always watching for the next face to wear.
Story number 5.
My name is Hannah, and if you're reading this, don't ever answer a knock at your door after midnight. I used to live in a quiet, boring cul-de-sac in Vermont, the kind where neighbors wave at each other and the mailman knows your dog's name. Nothing bad ever happened there. That was before the knocking started. It was late October, cold, foggy, the kind of nights where the wind sounds like it's whispering secrets. I was up late working on a freelance editing job when I heard it. Knock, knock, 3 soft, deliberate knocks. I checked the time, 12:17 a.m. I froze. No one should be at the door that late. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Porch light was on, empty. I waited. Maybe it was a prank. But the next night it happened again. Same time, same 3 knocks. Knock, knock. No one was there. The third night, I didn't go to the door. I stayed on the couch, holding my phone, staring at the door as the knocks came again. But this time, they didn't stop at 3. They continued. Knock, 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 knock. The sound wasn't angry. It was patient, rhythmic, like whoever or whatever was out there could wait forever. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m. with all the lights on. The 4th night, I set up a camera on the porch, motion activated. I never heard the knock. I only woke up to an alert on my phone at 12:17. I watched the footage. At exactly 12:17 a.m., the camera glitched. The footage went fuzzy for 7 seconds. Then it returned to normal, showing an empty porch. But in the corner of the frame, the door moved, ever so slightly, like something had pressed against it. No sound, no person. I should have left. I should have gone to a hotel, called the police, something. But some awful curiosity kept me there. I had to know what was happening. So I stayed up the 5th night with every light off, phone recording, sitting in silence. At 12:17 a.m. exactly, the knocks came again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time I heard a voice, a whisper, female, right outside the door. Let me in. I jumped up, grabbed my phone, and crept to the peephole. This time someone was there. A woman stood on the porch, her back to the door, long black hair plastered to her back like she'd been caught in a storm. Her head twitched every few seconds, like she was trying to turn but couldn't. She whispered again, "Please, let me in, he's coming." I opened my mouth to speak, but then she turned. No face, just smooth, pale skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. I screamed and stumbled backward. Then the knocks came from the back door. I didn't wait. I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and called 911. When the police arrived, they found no one, no footprints, no damage. They chalked it up to stress, maybe a dream. I moved in with my sister the next day. That night, I stayed up again. I was afraid to sleep. And at 12:17 a.m., her voice came from the closet. "You let me follow." I stared at the door, heart pounding. I could hear breathing, wet, rasping, heavy. Then the knob began to turn, slow and deliberate. I shoved a dresser in front of it and didn't sleep a second. The next morning, I asked my sister if she had heard anything. She looked pale. "Actually," she said, "I thought I heard knocking last night, from my window." I checked the window. Outside, etched into the frost-covered glass, were 3 finger streaks, like something had traced the outline of a face. We left that night. I've moved 3 times since, changed my number, deleted all social media. But still, every few weeks, no matter where I go, I hear it. Knock, knock, knock. Always at 12:17, always followed by the whisper, "Let me in." And each time, It sounds a little closer. I don't know what she is, but I know this. If you ever hear a knock after midnight, don't answer, because she doesn't knock to get in. She knocks to see if you're listening.
Story number 6.
It was supposed to be a short hike, just a one-night solo trip to clear my head after the breakup. I chose Iron Ridge Trail because it was quiet, off-season, and the reviews called it serene and completely untouched. I didn't tell anyone exactly where I'd be, just texted a friend the general area. That was my first mistake. The trail started fine. Crisp autumn air, red and gold leaves crunching under my boots. But about 5 miles in, the woods changed. The trees grew taller, darker. The branches tangled overhead like a cage. It felt too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional distant crack of a stick that wasn't mine. By dusk, I found a clearing with an old stone fire ring. Too perfect, too centered, like someone wanted people to camp there. I set up my tent and got a small fire going, but the unease never left. Around midnight, I heard the first voice. It was a child's voice, far off, barely audible. Help! I sat up straight, heart thudding. The woods were pitch black beyond my fire. I listened. Please, he's coming. It drifted through the trees like mist. I turned off my fire, thinking maybe someone was lost. But when I stepped into the dark, my flashlight died instantly. The voice stopped. And then, from behind me, just inches from my ear, I spun around. Nothing. I ran back to my tent, zipped it shut, and waited in silence. That's when the scratching began. Not on the tent fabric, underneath it. Like something was crawling between the tent floor and the earth below. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then a whisper inside the tent. Found you. I screamed and scrambled out into the woods, blindly running with nothing but moonlight. I ran until I collapsed against a tree, gasping, trembling. Behind me, I heard laughter. Low, wet, like something choking on its own breath. Then I saw the cabin. Old, rotting, half sunken into the forest. Windows boarded, door crooked. But it had light. A dim, flickering lantern glow inside. Desperate, I ran to it, banged on the door. It opened. Not by hand. It just opened. I stepped inside. It was empty. Dust, mold, old furniture covered in cloth, but no lantern and no source for the light. That's when I saw the mirror, standing tall in the corner. Antique, cracked, but in the reflection the room was full of people, all of them facing away, silent, still, except one, a man. He was facing me in the mirror, wearing a deer skull as a mask. Antlers scraped the top of the frame. His body was all wrong, elongated, twitching like bad stop motion. He raised one hand and pointed. At me. I turned around. The room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, he was gone. So were the others. Just my own reflection, wide-eyed, shaking, until it blinked. I didn't. My reflection moved on its own, smiling, twisting its head slowly. It raised its hand again and scratched something on the mirror from inside. I ran. I didn't stop until morning. By sheer luck, I found a ranger's outpost and collapsed at the doorstep. When they took me back to retrieve my gear, the ranger looked confused. There's no cabin out here, he said. We searched. Nothing. No clearing. No stone ring. Just endless trees. I don't camp anymore, but sometimes when I look in mirrors too long, I see him. Standing behind me, just for a second, smiling through the deer skull, waiting for me to come back.
Story number 7.
They told us not to go into the reservoir. Everyone in the town of Ashmere knew that. The old folks spoke of it like a wound the earth never healed. But my friends and I, 4 bored teens with nothing to do and too much bravado, we thought it was just another local ghost story. That changed the night we found the stairs. We were camping near the edge of the reservoir one weekend, where the trees thinned and the mist never quite cleared. It was supposed to be a dare, just one night near the water. We joked about the stories, that the town flooded the valley 50 years ago to make the reservoir, that the original village, houses, church, graveyard was still beneath it, perfectly preserved, and that sometimes when the water dropped low enough, things came back up. It was around 2 a.m. when Darren saw them. Guys, he said, flashlight trembling, there's stairs in the water. We laughed until we saw them too. Stone steps, barely visible beneath the surface, leading downward, perfectly carved, clean, not covered in algae or moss like they should have been. They looked new. They hadn't been there when we arrived. Darren, of course, wanted to explore. They probably lead to the old church. This is epic. Against better judgment, we agreed to follow, just for a few steps. I went last. The water was freezing, black as oil, but the stairs held firm underfoot. 10 steps down and the world grew silent. Even the wind seemed afraid to follow. Then came the whispering. At first it sounded like water moving, but soon it formed words. Come deeper. We turned to leave, but the steps were gone. Just black water behind us. Panic hit. Darren screamed something and bolted forward, deeper into the dark. We followed, slipping, waiting now as the stairs curved downward into a tunnel of stone. And then we reached the door. Massive. Wood swollen from decades underwater, but still intact. It stood open, and from within came light, flickering, golden, like candles, and the chanting, low, monotonous, human. But when we stepped through, there were no people, just pews, stone walls, an altar, and dozens of figures seated silently, backs to us. Only they weren't moving. They weren't breathing. They weren't alive, mummified, rotting, dressed in soaked Sunday best, heads bowed in eternal prayer. One sat in the pulpit, its head jerked up as we entered, face leathery and stretched, mouth sewn shut with rusted wire. Yet it spoke. You do not belong here. Darren screamed and turned to run. That's when the doors slammed shut. The corpses began to stir. One by one, heads lifted, eyes opened, milky sunken, and turned toward us. I don't remember getting out. I woke up in the woods at dawn, soaked and alone. Darren was gone. So were Liv and Mark. No one believed me. They dragged the reservoir, found nothing, said maybe they ran away, that I made it up to cover something, but I know what I saw. 3 weeks later, I got a package, no return address. Inside was a photo. It showed the inside of the sunken church, and seated in the front pew, heads bowed, were 3 new bodies. Darren, Liv, Mark, and scrawled in wet ink on the back of the photo, there is always room for one more. I haven't gone near water since, and sometimes when I dream, I hear the chanting again and footsteps behind me on stairs that don't exist.
Story number 8.
I used to work night shift at a 24-hour gas station just off Highway 73. You'd be surprised how quiet it gets out there around 3 a.m. Just you, the buzzing fluorescent lights, and the occasional trucker passing through. The nights were uneventful until the man with the burlap sack came in. He showed up one Thursday night, dragging his left leg behind him like it was asleep. He wore a trench coat soaked at the bottom, and his face was mostly hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. But what I remember most was the sack he carried, small, twitching, and tied at the top with something that looked like braided hair. He didn't speak, just shuffled to the far corner where we kept the coffee. I watched him from behind the counter, my hand already inching toward the silent alarm. Then the sack screamed. A muffled, wet, high-pitched cry, like an animal in pain, or something pretending to be one. I froze. The man didn't react. He poured coffee, dropped $1 on the counter, and walked back outside, the sack wailing faintly as he vanished into the darkness. I didn't sleep the next day. That would have been the end of it if he hadn't come back the next night. And the next, always at the same time, always with a new, slightly larger sack, and every time it screamed. On the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I followed him. He walked into the tree line behind the station, where the land dipped into an old drainage ditch. I stayed back, hidden. He didn't use a flashlight. He didn't need to. The sack glowed faintly now, a sickly yellow pulsing through the fabric like something radioactive. He knelt and opened it. What crawled out wasn't human. It had too many limbs, eyes that blinked in vertical rows, and a mouth that didn't open so much as split. But the worst part? It looked at me. It saw me. The man didn't. He just whispered something to the creature, soft, guttural, not any language I knew, and then let it scurry off into the trees. I ran, back to the station, locked every door, quit the next morning. I thought that was the end of it, until the nightmares began. Every night I saw those sacks, lined up outside my bedroom, tied tight, all of them moving. I tried to burn one in a dream once. It screamed with my voice. Then I started hearing knocking at my window, not the door, the second-story window. Just 3 gentle taps. Always around 3:03 a.m. I never looked, until last night. I peeked through the blinds. The man was there, hat gone, face revealed. He didn't have a mouth, just skin, tight and smooth, stitched where lips should be. But still, I heard him. You saw. Now you carry. There's a sack outside my door right now. It's not moving yet, but it will. And when it does, I don't know if I'm supposed to feed it or if I am the food. Whatever you do, if you're ever on Highway 73 and you see a man with a burlap sack, don't follow.
Story number 9.
I was hired to clean out houses no one wanted to touch. Foreclosures, crime scenes, abandoned estates. I worked solo, quiet, and fast. No questions asked. That's how I landed the job at the Whitmore place. The listing said it was an old Victorian deep in the hills, untouched since the 90s. Owner gone. Distant relatives wanted it gutted and sold. No one else would take it. The note on the work order was simple. Do not go into the attic. They never needed to tell me that. I don't explore more than I'm paid to. But the attic door was ajar when I got there. I ignored it at first, focused on the ground floor. The house was unnaturally cold, dustless, even though no one had been there in years. Everything was covered in thick plastic sheets, like someone expected to return, and the air smelled sweet, like rotting fruit mixed with perfume. Then I heard the creak from upstairs, just once. I paused, heart thudding. Probably the house settling, I told myself, but then it creaked again and again, like footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from above. I should have left. Instead, I climbed the stairs. The attic door stood open now, wide open. Inside, it was pitch black. My flashlight flickered the second I aimed it in. Batteries fresh, brand new. Still, it sputtered like it didn't want to show me what was inside. I stepped in. The air was dense, heavy, like stepping into water. The walls were covered in mirrors, dozens of them, all shapes and sizes, antique, cracked, some tilted, and they all reflected something wrong. I looked around. There were no windows, but the mirrors showed light. There was no one else in the attic, but the mirrors showed people, not moving, just standing, silent, watching. And in every mirror, I wasn't alone. There was a figure, tall, thin, no face, just a mouth, wide, grinning, stretched impossibly across where its head should have been. And every time I turned around, nothing was there, only in the mirrors. Then the door slammed shut. The attic was dark, and the mirrors began to whisper, not in words I knew, just sounds, scraping, clicking, like broken teeth clacking together. I reached for the door. Gone. There was only a wall now. I turned back. One mirror directly across from me was glowing. Inside, my reflection stared, except it wasn't copying me. It moved on its own. It grinned. Then it reached through the glass. Its hand burst through the surface like water, gripping the frame, pulling itself out. I screamed and backed into another mirror, which shattered, except instead of falling glass, it bled. Thick black blood poured from the cracks. I don't remember how I got out. I woke up on the front lawn, covered in dust and splinters, gasping for air. The house was sealed again. Windows boarded, door chained, no sign I'd ever been inside. But my phone had a photo in the camera roll I didn't take. It showed the attic, empty, except for one mirror, and me standing inside it, smiling, waiting. Now every time I pass a mirror, my reflection feels a second too slow. And sometimes when I move, it doesn't. It's watching, waiting for the day I get too close so it can step out again.
Story number 10.
My brother Peter went missing when I was 9. He was 11. We shared a room in our old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, fields and forest in every direction. One night I woke up and he was just gone. No broken window, no footprints, no noise. The police thought he ran away. My parents never really recovered. But I remember what I saw that night. At the foot of his bed, there was a hole. A perfectly round black opening like a tunnel, but not dug through dirt. It was just there, like a rip in the world. And right before Peter disappeared, I saw something come out of it. Something thin and gray with 2 long arms and fingers that bent wrong. It beckoned him and he went. He didn't even scream. I tried telling people. No one believed me. So I stopped talking about it. But I never forgot. Fast forward 15 years. I'm 24 now. My parents are long gone. The house abandoned. I avoided it as long as I could. But something brought me back last fall. Guilt, curiosity, maybe the need to face it. I wanted to prove to myself it was just a dream. That there was no hole, no creature, just grief warping a child's brain. I wish I hadn't gone back. The house was falling apart, windows broken, wallpaper peeling like skin. But our bedroom, it looked preserved, undisturbed, like time hadn't touched it. And in the middle of the floor was the hole, still perfect, still black, no bottom, no light. It hummed if you got close, like a pressure in your skull. This time I didn't run. I set up a camera, sat down, waited, and at exactly 3:13 a.m. something stirred. First the whispering, like voices underwater. Then the smell, mildew and copper and something rotten. Then the hands, they came first, pale, veined, and possibly long. Then the arms, shoulders, and finally the face, or what should have been one. It was smooth, eyeless, a slit where a mouth should be. But it spoke. We remember you. I froze. And then it said, he's ready to come home. A second shape emerged, smaller, human-shaped. I couldn't breathe. It was Peter, or what was left of him. His skin was pale, thin like paper. His eyes were all black. His mouth never moved, but I heard him. Why didn't you follow me? I wanted to run, scream. Anything, but I couldn't move. He held out his hand. It's better there. No pain, no time, just us. The other creature turned, stepped back into the hole. Peter hesitated, then whispered, next time, you will, and disappeared. I came to hours later. The camera footage was blank, just static and a high-pitched ringing. But the hole was still there, and now it started showing up in other places, in my dreams, in reflections. Once, behind me on a dark street, just for a second, waiting. I know what it wants. I know one night I'll wake up and it'll be at the foot of my bed again, and this time I might not be strong enough to say no.